season starts here, the Vancouver Boat Show.
Welcome to the Vancouver International Boat Show virtual seminar series, sponsored by Freedom Marine International Yacht Sales, the premier choice for exploring the passion of yachting. Thank you for joining us. The seminar will begin in 1 moment. If you are having technical difficulties, you can reach me, the online moderator, via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions for the speaker can be added to the Q&A box also at the bottom of your screen. We will ask these questions at the end of the presentation. Now it is our pleasure to present Provisions and Creative Boat Organization Below with Liza Copeland. Take it away, Liza.
Well, thanks so much. Well, hello, everyone, and great to be with you all, although not in live person, but isn't this wonderful we can use Zoom. So I'm talking about creative boat organization, primarily provisioning. And I have to just say a little bit about this picture. I actually saw this picture just very close to where I live in Vancouver, and I looked at it and thought, oh, that's fascinating. And it actually has a Japanese ensign on the back, and you have this vision of coming over one of the worst passages I know, and with a boat looking like that. And of course, it's anything but what I'm going to talk about today. Anyway, I was just doing my introduction actually in Victoria at a whole women's seminar day, and someone said, oh, how nice of you. That's my friend's boat. Anyway, I'll go from there. So just to make you dream of the Caribbean, thought I'd just show you our boat. We've done a huge number of miles, about 124,000 to 114 countries. She's a Beneteau, 1985, looking great, and really quite a fast but very comfortable boat. One of the things I'd like to point out, I could do, I have a whole seminar of outfitting the deck, but this is below, is really a lot of sun cover. The sun is your greatest enemy. It's going to be one of your biggest things when you're provisioning. So certainly a bimini, have a dodger, have a front opening section so you can get air through the dodger when it gets hot in summer, or when you do go down south, and particularly down below, I'll be talking about fans as well. Makes a huge difference when you're below if you can circulate the air, whether it's hot or cold. So what are some of the below deck fundamentals? Well, obviously safety is one. And I urge you to look at your boat and see what handhelds it has going down the companionway, whether you're actually going below. One of the great things about modern boats is they're very roomy below, but that gives huge spaces you can get thrown across if the boat lurches suddenly. Lee cloths if you're underway and you're doing long trips and it's rough, good hatches all throughout the boat, particularly in the galley and the head. Comfort, your lighting, your ventilation, your fans, berths should be a certain thickness, what covers should you have, clothing, mold, mildew in winter, certainly an issue in BC, and it is when you go to hot climes as well. Where are you going to store stuff? You can't really talk about provisioning until you have some idea of where you're going to put everything. And let me tell you, you know how they always say with food, my eyes are bigger than my stomach. Well, let me tell you, your eyes are always bigger than your storage space as well. So think about extending your storage. I'll be giving you some ideas all throughout the boat. And some of the bigger items, you know, toilet paper is one, paper towel and things like that. And then there's the actual provisioning. And you know, it's interesting because here last summer, people felt, oh, it's just Canadians. We're not going to have many people here. The anchorages will be empty and we don't need to do much provisioning because we won't be out for long. Well, how wrong they were. People were out for such a long time and they didn't go long distance that actually the provisioning was very necessary. I actually met a couple, I think the end of August, who'd been cruising 65 days. And I think this is going to be a thing of the future. They just moved their office to their boat and off they went. So coming from forward, our boat had the typical sort of shelf either side that didn't really hold very much. And it's amazing what you could do. Whether you're looking forward, we widened shelves, built-in lockers, and so everything can be put away. And if you're going for longer time periods, and even short period, I find it's really nice to know everything's stowed and you're not going to have a big job reorganizing after a trip. If you wonder what that little table is, Andy always brings me morning tea. And so that's the table, and I can pull it out or push it back under. Nothing like creature comforts on a boat. The head we had a lot of fun with. It's tiny. I always, my wish list is a separate shower stall, but we can shower in here. It's a good opportunity to clean the entire head. But towels are bulky. As I say, toilet paper is bulky. Our fiberglass red sink wore out, so we had fun when we were in Mexico. And Andy even painted the toilet seat to match. So you can tell that you can do a lot. You can still personalize a boat for you. The main cabin, again, you can see handhelds here, the pillar, the catches on all the drawers. This was pretty open when we got the boat, but we built in either side bookshelves. When we were gone long term, we needed a place for school books. We've got a locker, we've got sliding plexiglass, just amazing. And the old fashioned idea of just putting glasses, stacking them under the table where they're very convenient and putting your bottles inside the table. It all works really well. So it's living in small spaces that everyone's talking about nowadays with houses, but you sure learn to do it on a boat. And we had no problem. We circumnavigated in this boat with a family of 5, and there was really never a problem of space. The other side, this is a lee cloth. You can see the hooks. Oopsie, I'm trying to use the cursor here. And so here's a hook you go either side, and the lee cloth is under the berth. And again, that's the calmest place of the boat. It's where I do all my passengers. And it's really nice to know that even if you're beating and you're having a bit of a sleep, it could be an afternoon nap. My husband certainly has one every afternoon. Then you're not going to go flying. The hats for the sun, even in our climates, certainly back east and here, can get really hot. You see, we have a fan over every berth, and it's really nice in summer here. When you buy sheets, I think if you're in a hot, humid climate, as many of us are in Canada, if you get 100% cotton, they're going to feel clammy and damp. And so it's really better to get things with polyester in, and often with your clothes, because they dry just so more quickly. For anyone who's headed south, there's of course different electricity voltages. There's 110 and 220. So having a battery charger that does both is worthwhile. So going out, and this is in the Caribbean. I'm talking, by the way, about the Caribbean later this week. Green Island. I was just chatting to someone who is in Green Island. Isn't he lucky? But he's pretty well confined to Antigua. It's what are you going to do about laundry? And this becomes an issue when you're going long term, of course. So here's our friend Nick. We've actually just sailed up from Brazil. I just string my lines forward, and do remember to take them down. Otherwise you string someone, if they go up on the foredeck at night, you hang them. Again, storage, I can flip a cushion over and get bins all the way along the inside, that lower berth. So another thing you're going to end up with, it's interesting that boats are getting smaller and smaller chart tables. But in my mind, you should be getting larger, because you've got so many devices now. You know, you'll have probably your pad. You may still have computer charts because you get more detail. You'll probably have a log book. You might want to print out some large scale charts for coming into tricky anchorages if you're worried about your electronics. And believe me, you can lose satellite connection in many places, and particularly in BC, because we have high mountains and narrow channels. So there's not much airspace for a satellite. Yes, and lots of storage is good. You'll get more and more instruments. Of course, you have to have binoculars. Um, and a galley is the same. I'll be going a bit more into it. It is tiny. It's amazing the meals we turn out of galleys on boats. Although I must say I do commandeer the chart table every so often. It's just really a lot of fun. So this is a typical galley, a gimbaled stove, very useful, and make sure it can non-gimbal as well. You can put baffles around it if you've got pots with hot boiling water, a whistling kettle because it will only boil when you've gone up into the cockpit, and lockers that will take your ready use items. It's interesting, I was at a boat show last year, and there was a wonderful new boat. It was a 50-footer. The galley looked absolutely superb. And it was only when I started looking that I realized actually there was no place for a typical dinner plate in that entire galley. So think what you've got, what you use. Andy, my husband, just loves salads all the time, so we have a lettuce spinner. Other people would prioritize that space differently, but it's so good to have everything you need just to be able to reach it. Paper towel comes in different sizes, so a rod like that is really useful. With your, we have a fridge freezer. It has a very big heavy lid, and it's well insulated, so it's going to be heavy. So it has its automatic prop, but a hard catch is really good in case you knock it with your elbow. It really can hurt coming down on you. Deep sinks, of course, I like them for hiding dirty dishes if people come on board unexpectedly, besides everything else aboard for shopping. And really high fiddles coming around, so you can put any bowls and they're not going to go. Non-slip mats are really good too. Don't you think you have to rough it on a boat? I can't live without my cappuccino. So we have our thermos coffee press and our milk grinder and our milk spinner, and I'm a happy camper. So this is another galley where I did a long trip 2+ years ago. I sailed from England to the Azores, and this was one of my wish list boat. It's a Hilus 49. It's absolutely top of the line, highest end specs you can believe. Absolutely beautiful all the way through. And I looked at the galley and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I was actually fortunate because the skipper decided he was going to cook all the main meals and freeze them. So I was let off lightly for the trip over there anyway. And all of us shared the cooking, which is a good way of going. But you look at this galley and you think endless storage space. They've got an opening refrigerator. They've got a big deep freeze. Isn't this good? And storage all the way over to the other side, to the port side. But when I went to the port side, guess what happened? I got straight into the engine room. So that's why it's really important to explore your galley before you buy a boat, and then figure out how you're going to use it. A lot of boats have microwaves these days, very quick to do. I don't know. I use mine mostly for heating up my coffee, it seems, but it's great for defrosting food and whatever else you use it for, quick cooking. So what equipment? Well, basically you can have the same equipment at home. It's good to have a really good quality stainless steel, otherwise it will go brown over time. Non-stick frying pan is good. A roasting pan, but if you get a roasting pan, the size, the width of your oven, you can actually use it as another shelf. And a lot of ovens these days only come with one shelf, but you could put another one, bake some cookies or something else of the same size. And if you're into that kind of thing, then all the pans that need to go with it. I mentioned the kettle and the thermos, plates, mugs, non-breakable are really a good way to go, but I think most of us will succumb maybe to having a special coffee mug, a glass for our wine when we're at a really calm anchorage. And again, good stainless steel for your cutlery. Regular cooking utensils that you normally use, like can openers, and really strong scissors are always useful. And of course, your lobster and crab probes. And crab Oh, crab is wonderful up the coast here, and of course lobster on the east coast, and your custom towel rail. Non-slip mats, really, they're fantastic, particularly in the cockpit. Um, and a comprehensive cookery book, you know, so often when you're along the way, particularly if you're offshore, you find things that you're not used to buying. But you have got time on a boat. And even locally, I find a lot of friends of mine are really, really getting into cooking. So whatever book you want, I mean, there's so many these days. In the old days, we all, you know, fell back onto the joy of cooking, but now maybe you're not a Lengi fan or a Jamie Oliver fan or whoever, and take along the cookery book of your choice. And then all the normal things, plastic rack and baggies, whatever. Trying not to use plastic, not good. A fire blanket, you can get it at any hardware store. The most lightly fire you're going to have in a boat is in the galley. And the fire blanket, if it's on the stove, you can just smother it, so no oxygen can get in. Anyone who's let off a fire extinguisher will know you never wanted to go do it again. You will be finding that fine white dust for years to come. So when you're provisioning at home, of course, you've got all your familiar brands, but when you go overseas, you've got to be more adaptable. Even going down to the US, I find I have to be more adaptable. If you're going to buy in bulk, do try out a new brand first, because they're fun, but you might not like it before you buy in bulk. Just to enjoy the adventure of discovery. So many friends of mine up here have enjoyed discovering seafood and how to cook seafood and all the different marinades you can make for seafood, something they never did at home because it smelled out the house. So your particular provisioning, Lewis, would always depend on, obviously, your eating habits, the cruising area you're going to, distances between predictable shopping, or on this side, if you're going to go up north, it's going to, you might be, you can be weeks without visiting a grocery store if you want to. If you don't, you can find one. The number of people in the crew, the climate. Obviously, in hotter weather, you'll be lighter food, the budget, and what the cook likes to cook. But on the other hand, do try and share the cooking. It's a bit of a burden if you have to do all the cooking, if you have friends on board, or even if you're a couple. So I provide provisioning styles are so fascinating. I know people who make extensive Excel sheets, and they only work from those, and they know precisely where everything is on the boat. Other people just work from recipes and make lists from recipes. Others make a short list of essentials. And whatever works for you, you should go with that, because there can be some pressure from people who think the other way, that you're not doing it properly or you're going to run out of things. If you're very laissez-faire about provisioning, then obviously it doesn't matter to you if you run out of things. But on my boat, we couldn't run out of tea for my husband and toilet paper. Those are the crucial things. So you decide on your preferred method, and you will shop accordingly. So what are you going to be doing when you're along the way? Well, you do a lot of this, maybe not quite this many people. This is a fun group of us from Vancouver. We all went to Turkey. We met up with cruising friends who have this lovely Beneteau 57, and they said, come on board for lunch. And I said, well, few people. So I think 22 of us went on board for lunch, and we hadn't seen this couple, the Australian couple, for 20 years, and it was just as though we'd seen them yesterday. But obviously, you're going to need things to take if you're not going to descend that number of people and not take anything. It's the same with beach barbecues. This is also Antigua. This group, there are 5 nationalities in this group, and lovely Sue in the middle here used to run Terminal 1 at Heathrow Airport. Fascinating backgrounds people have, and don't think you're not going to find them when you're cruising locally, because you do. Some people might be sort of heading into the sunset and want meals accordingly, preparing meals in advance. These 2 guys are a good example about how you need to coordinate everyone who's going to do a task. They're setting off across the Atlantic, and their wives didn't catch the plane. And so they bought all this food, and they say, what are we going to do with it now? Well, they had ice in there. Get it below, get it stored. But no, there needs to be a good coordination when you shop. So what kind of provisions? Well, non-perishables are you can buy way in advance, although be warned, some products when you travel further, like flour, particularly strong flour for bread, have a shelf life. There's semi-perishables updated more frequently, and then you're going to have your ones you've got to buy all the time. And as I said, before you buy in bulk, do try things out, because I bought 3 cases of tuna when we left Australia. And after we tried the first one, which looked this very unappealing kind of greenish liquid, the whole of the 3 cans were opened and went back to the tuna in the ocean. So you can't afford that with your storage. You can have frozen canned, freeze-dried, vacuum sealed. Home canning is very much a BC thing, and obviously dried goods and storage units. In some climates, you get a lot of bugs, and and even in northern climates, don't believe you won't get a rat or mice on board occasionally. So having large, really good quality containers to put everything for long and short term is really worthwhile. But do measure the spaces they're going to go into before you go out buying, just like your galley and like your oven. Everything you're going to buy. It's quite irritating that 3 normal size bread pans don't fit in an average boat oven. So things are often are quite difficult. This is in Morocco, and the choice was buying the chickens like this, or actually watching them being killed around the corner, choosing them when we were live. The worst actually I had was buying a chicken that looked totally normal in Barcelona, and I opened it up to get the gizzards out, and this thing came flying and hit me in the nose, and it was so sharp, and of course it was the beak, and my kids still remember the scream. So attack things gently that you don't know. And don't believe that's always further afield. You can get a out of the way butcher here who leaves that in as well. Cheese will last for a very long time if it's vacuum packed or wax sealed. Hard cheeses will last, soft cheeses not so much. You can soak them in cheesecloth and vinegar, and again put them in airtight containers. And eggs, you can keep eggs for I don't know, 6 weeks, but you need to buy fresh eggs, not ones that have been refrigerated, because you don't know how old they are. Ideally, in markets, they haven't been washed, so they're really fresh, but you might not want to deal with that. We used to put petroleum jelly on it, but actually you don't have to. If you just flip them over every 2 days, it stops the yolk getting to by the shell, by the skin, at which point oxygen will get in and they'll go off. But if you don't let that happen, you can just keep your eggs, as I say, for a very long time, and keep them in a cool place. Have your own plastic egg carriers is a good idea as well. Milk, UHT milk in North America isn't great. It's great worldwide. I don't know. I guess we didn't have a need for it. But good powdered varieties are everywhere. And if you really mix them up carefully ahead of time and chill them, they're great on cereal and in tea and coffee and everything. Butter can come canned if you want it for a long time. Yogurt, but you can also buy UHT yogurt that'll last long. Or you can make it with powdered milk and a spoon of fresh yogurt. I can do that about 6 times. And then it starts getting a flavor, I find. So I go back to the beginning. So food everywhere really varies. We have wonderful farmers markets now everywhere we go, and they'll get some interesting products, ones you haven't seen before, or herbs before, and just ask what to use them in and try them. It's just all a lovely adventure. So produce is going to be the last thing you buy before you leave, and don't store it in plastic bags because it gets very hot and humid. It'll ripen and go off very quickly. Check your produce every day. If you get a little bit of mildew, it's just going to run everywhere. And that's the same with anything. It's the same with your clothing. If you get heavy salt water on your clothing and put it in a locker and it's pretty hot, a week later, everything in your locker is black. Again, try and buy fresh in the market. You know, when we buy in the supermarket, they've been watering all the lettuces for so long, they're pretty wilted by the time we get home. So it makes a certain type of lettuce, will keep much longer. Dry in the sun if it's super wet. Don't mix onions with potatoes because they mutually ripen each other. And there's some things you can pretty well keep forever, like squash, sweet potato, yams, a cabbage, tropical roots, turnips, and cooking bananas. Bananas themselves, they all ripen at one time. You know, in the Caribbean, it was very romantic to have a stick of bananas hanging on the back of your boat. But you needed to like bananas because whatever you did, whether you had them that growing upwards, heading downwards, in the dark, in the light, they all ripen together, as you can see here. So, and they will have lots of cockroaches on them. Cockroaches, by the way, fly. So another time when I screamed, finding one on my pillow in the morning. So tomatoes will ripen quickly if placed near citrus. So buy a variety of ripeness before you leave. A lot of citrus will have very thick skins, so you don't get the juice. So check them out. Oranges naturally are green, by the way. Iceberg and romaine is the lettuces that will keep longer. And if you put them in a Ziploc bag with a damp towel and remove any outer leaves, of course, they seem to last pretty well. Apples, the crunchy Granny Smith or Pink Lady, they really, really last well, whereas delicious go mushy very quickly, and you can wrap them individually. And then fresh green bags. Now, you can buy these bags and they have a clay which absorbs ethylene gas, but actually they put this, they put the same in all the containers you buy in the supermarket, which is why, you know, the containers may be of mushrooms or blueberries or whatever you buy, why the produce lasts a lot longer. So bugs, you can add bay leaves, and particularly will keep weevils out. When Andy and I were in the Caribbean, that's where I met him. So it was early on in our relationship, he tried to convince me that weevils were a great source of protein. I don't think so. And cereal, I still can't eat oats that aren't cooked today because I can just remember them wiggling from the worms. So check everything you buy very carefully. Bugs come in boxes, so Tetra Paks are really bad, and cardboard boxes you might have bought your groceries from the store in. Check really, really carefully there aren't the eggs inside. Stock up on your traps and bug spray. Certainly, I think in all of Canada, as you go north, we get terrible mosquitoes, we get black fly, and you need to be really, really prepared for it. And port towns have rats, so to stop them, do what the cruise ships do. Put funnels on your mooring lines facing towards the shore so they can't climb in. And if you leave the boat for an extended time, everything should be in bug-proof containers. I had this terrible thing of going back to Bagheera in Brazil, and we'd left for 5 months. And the outside of the boat looked great, but they hadn't been below, and there were thousands and thousands of flying ants. The reason being that I had left 2 mini Mars bars, actually double containers, but my containers were so old at that time they were cracked, and they loved the chocolate. All my hardcover cruising guides had brown inside, it was chocolate. Took a while to get rid of them. So if you're going to do overnight or offshore passages or easy passages, or short passages, aren't going to be comfortable, even going to our Gulf Islands here, which is say on a sailboat, maybe a 4 or 5 hour run, it's great to have some comfort foods, your lunch all made up before you go. And maybe you just want snacky food, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, whatever anyone likes at hand. But if you are prone to seasickness, and I'll get onto that later, don't have any rich foods. Everyone needs fluids. I mean, we need them, I say in the tropics, but it could be here in hot weather. And you need to drink a lot of water, ideally about 8 glasses a day. But you don't need too much water, because then you flush away all your electrolytes, particularly sodium and potassium. So be careful you don't get into overdoing it with the water, but keeping hydrated is really important. A lot of people have water makers now, and filtered water tastes pretty bland, and so you might want to flavor it. Most of our guests haven't liked our water maker water because they say, oh, but it's nothing like bottled water, but most bottled water tastes. If you do go down to the sunny south, and particularly the Caribbean, remember that rum is cheaper than the mix, and you start off with your rum punches, maybe at 4 in the afternoon, and you get 2 for 1. Well, one rum punch is great, 2 is probably sufficient for women, and 3 is over the top. And all these things, alcohol, coffee, tea, they're all diuretics, so they will all encourage seasickness. If you're going out into the ocean, you have a grab or ditch bag, and you need high energy food for that. Medical supplies, if you're heading up north, having some antibiotics and antihistamines is always good, and all your typical salves. Suntan lotion. White vinegar is useful. There's so many things besides cooking. You can use it for cleaning, but it's really good for jellyfish stings. And we seem to have some years. I know there was one year when there was a surfeit of red jellyfish, certainly here in BC, but we went to Italy and they were there too. It was just, they don't normally see them, and they're big stingers. And then you've got a seasick meds and diet, and again, I'll address that later. So there are going to be some luxury items you want, and maybe you'll get those in advance. I have a rule that if I've done the provisioning one day, we're eating out that night. I think I deserve it, and we'll be in a marina, because it's just so much easier to load the boat than it is sort of heaving it up from the dinghy and heaving it on board. And so if you're cruising for a while and you find a favorite product, it's a cause for a celebration, and don't deny yourself. So fishing is very important when you're at sea, and there's so many different kinds of fish you can catch. And we use the alcohol trick. We have it in a squeezy bottle. You can see here 2 squirts on the gills and the gullet. Pop them upside down in the bucket. If they flap again, like the big ones, like the sailfish may, then 2 more, the gills will be open, then 2 more squirts, and that's all it needs. They kind of got this nice smile of peaceful oblivion. And in the tropics, you need to, or offshore, you need to pull your fish in quickly. So this is my grandson, and they're visiting in Belize, and he was so slow getting all his fish in that he only got heads. He went back to his school in Tawasul and said, I know for a fact no fish in Belize has a body. That's what I found. Really cute. So all your marinades, of course, you should freeze your fish before you have them raw. Soy, wasabi, Tabasco, whatever you like was the sauce. And there's so many different things to cook. These are spot prawns. I'm saying from BC, we actually led a rally here, and we'd had something different every night. And what were we going to do the last night? And we managed to catch 210 of these absolutely wonderful spot prawns. Jamie here with the wonderful lobster in the Bahamas, I believe. A friend out on the West Coast with huge, huge mussels. They were, about 5 inches long. Colin, his huge crab. Anyway, it's all a lot of the fun of being on board. So now you're provisioning, and what you're going to do with your provisioning and how you're going to do it. Well, this is the person who probably does the Excel spreadsheets, and they absolutely are going to estimate exactly what they're going to eat each day. A lot of the sailing schools do this, and they are going to buy accordingly. I don't know, I'm not that routine in what I eat, but it really does suit a lot of people to do it this way. And it's pretty detailed, you can see. This was one I found. It's a 6-month trip across the Pacific for a family of 4. It's quite amusing reading down it and how people like. I mean, they've got 240 cans of beer, 35 bottles of rum, and 54 bottles of wine. They obviously do well. And somewhere I saw, 44 boxes. They like their nibbles to go with it. But there was other something to do with other a kind of food, junk food to go with it. The one that amazed me was 41 rolls of toilet paper for 6 months. I don't know, a family of 5 on our boat got through pretty well a roll a day. So we had to can accordingly. So you can imagine we needed a lot of storage space. Anyway, people will make a long-term plan. Other people will say, well, we'll make a menu and we're going to buy accordingly. And I did this before we crossed the Atlantic for the Atlantic Rally for cruises, because we had a French couple on board as crew. He was actually a highly qualified French chef. Anyway, I made my menu, and they were doing half the cooking. And he came back with his menu, and every meal was fish. And I said, but Jacques, what if we don't catch fish? Because actually in the ocean, the fish are too big and they're too difficult to get on board. And what are you going to do with them? You haven't got enough space to keep them. And anyways, but he said, the ocean is full of the fish. And I said, yes, but they may not attach themselves to our hook. So you need to rethink this. But this certainly worked well for me. You realize if you're a pasta eater, how many cans of tomato paste and tomatoes you're going to buy. This is sort of more the kind of thing I follow. Mainly in my head, I have to say these days, but I think of categories, and I know that maybe I'm not going to find everything in this category, so I'm not going to be specific about my pastas, but I'll have something in mind, and if I can find it, isn't that great? But just making sure you've got something as an overview, you've got your seasonings to put in to things, and your bouillon stock's pretty basic, and you've got some cheeses and you've got some spices, and it goes on and on, but you've got your basics covered. So what you need is to start your own list and make a list of what you commonly eat at home. And it's some people are really surprised how much they eat of some things and maybe how little of the others. Go through the fridge and cupboard systematically, and list all your replacements when you shop. Think all the while of where you're going to store things on board. So it's quite common practice that you'll kind of have a big area, like we have one under a forward berth, which is really my pantry. That's my overflow. So I have everything out that I can close to hand, because it's when I have to bend down or go in lockers that I feel queasy. But there will be this pantry, this storage area. How much tea and coffee, and you'll probably have less on the boat if you get seasick. Make a menu for 2 weeks, just going up from here, going up to Desolation for 2 weeks. There is shopping, but just treat the shopping as kind of an adventure to see what they've got rather than a necessity. And think about your garbage and getting rid of it. Try and get rid of all your plastics. If you have to keep it on board, which of course your plastic you would, it does take up a lot of space. And there is an international law actually at sea, and even with biodegradables, it has to be cut out so that the diameter is less than an inch, and it's at least 3 miles from shore. So seasickness is you know, it's so annoying because the people who don't get seasick can't quite understand the agony you go through. And for me, I can feel totally fine, and I go below, and it's that one rogue wave, and it can do it for me. So make sure you don't get talked into going below. And as I mentioned, the diuretic foods, the alcohol, caffeine, and also highly acidic foods, no extravagant foods before you go out. Even crossing the Gulf here would help a lot of people. Get a good night of sleep, and you know, always keep the positive in mind. Yes, maybe it's not going to be a nice trip over there from the weather forecast, but we know we're going to have a great time at the other side. We're meeting our friends, we're going to a new restaurant. You know, we've been really looking forward to going to this Anchorage, whatever. Get all your meals and snacks ready in advance. The best medications are Stugeron. Stugeron's an antihistamine, but unlike many other antihistamines, it doesn't seem to make you drowsy, but it also doesn't keep you pop-eyed awake so you can't sleep. It is not available in Canada, although some people have had it mailed in. It's in all the other English-speaking countries. It's in Mexico, it's in the Caribbean. The generic is Cinnarizine. So not that anyone's traveling at the moment, but you have friends coming from England, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, they can all bring you some. And it's just wonderful. A scopolamine patch is good. You put this round disc, you mustn't cut it in half because all the fluid runs out. It lasts 3 days, but you have to put it on, for me, 12 hours in advance, and you can't mix it with any other medication. So you need to check that out with your pharmacist if you are on prescription meds. Do check the wave and swell forecast. Spending a night at anchor, get used to motion is really good. So we go from seasickness to eating well. But the camaraderie on board, the camaraderie in the cockpit, we've had so many evenings where we invited people for drinks, and we were still at it 11 o'clock at night, and just so much fun and so many good memories. Rallies, if you're worried about provisioning, and it's great to go in a rally. Go in a local rally, go in one overseas. This is the Ocean Cruising Club. Everyone's done at least 1,000 miles direct offshore to belong to this club. And we had a couple of rallies, or we've had more than a couple that we led, but we've had many others. And they just, again, camaraderie and a lot of hanging out and you know, going off shopping together, and really enjoyment and a sense of friendship that maybe you don't get from your neighbors at home. So with all this, of course, I've got lots of books to help you. My Cruising for Cowards, I've just gone into a 3rd edition. I've also brought out an ebook. So you can go on the boat show site, and it's in Amazon. I put a special price for Canadians. So you'll go into the Canadian section or go into amazon.ca. But that's all the aspects of cruising, whether you're looking at electronics for the boat, or you're looking at all the medical concerns, you're thinking about buying a water maker, the whole gamut is covered in there. I have Just Fill and Comfortable Cruising, which all cover different places in the world. Comfortable was North and Central America. We started in BC, went all the way down to Panama, did the Western Caribbean, and came up the Eastern Seaboard. Up to Maine and Nova Scotia, and I have all your route planning and weather to do it either way. Great trip, because short hops, stop along the way, leave the boat, normal times, back and forth easily with air travel, and easy to work away. Just Cruising and Still Cruising together go around the world. Just Cruising is Europe, Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean, and through Panama, Galapagos, and South Pacific, and Still Cruising is the Indian Ocean and Africa and Asia. Really off the beaten track. And I just actually got it up today, Still Cruising, in an ebook, and it was really fun going back over time and reading about it again. So I do urge you to take a look at the books. As I say, they're all on the BC Marine Authors booth at the show. I'll also say that after the show, I'm going to be virtually manning the booth, so you could ask for questions as well. But meanwhile, let's open the floor to questions and go from here, Braden.
All right, if anyone at home has any questions for Liza, be sure to drop those into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We'll get things started off here. What are the pros and cons of using a hammock to store provisions?
Sorry, the pros and cons of using
Hammock to store provisions.
a hammock. Oh, well, a hammock is great. I am not a particular fan, I'll admit. The reason being that hammocks, swing. I mean, the idea of a hammock is to swing, so they take up a lot of space. You also don't want to put onions in a hammock because you get onion peel every day swinging across your cabin. Personally, I prefer a basket, a big basket, and I go through everything and check it from the basket. Um, and um, and as I mentioned, with things like apples, I'll individually wrap them and put them along a shelf. So the hammocks were the very much a traditional thing people used, and they didn't have much storage. And that worked well. But as I say, personally, I think baskets work well, but you can use either.
All right, perfect. What is a UHT?
Oh, UHT is a process where they heat the product to a very, very high temperature. And so it doesn't need refrigeration. So it's with milk products, you get milk itself, you get a yogurt particularly. Um, Interestingly, when they first started it, and it goes back way, way, way back when, I think in the 70s, 80s, I had it in the Caribbean. And it used to taste a bit like evaporated milk, a bit like evaporated milk. But now, in most parts of the world, they have got it. In England, for example, you almost can't tell the difference. So it comes in a Tetra Pak, a liter Tetra Pak. So it's really good when you're going longer term. And here in BC, we find the one thing we run out of is milk because we like cappuccinos. So it's useful to have around. But for some reason in North America, it's quite expensive. Elsewhere, it's not. But it's a really handy thing to have. Also, in the past, powdered milks were terrible. The powdered milks now, the skim powdered milk that I've been buying is really excellent in Canada and the States. So that's another, obviously anything powdered takes up less space.
All right, next up here. When it comes to fishing, what kind of alcohol are you using in the gills of the fish?
Well, hopefully not too expensive alcohol. I think the first time we tried it, we were very skeptical. And we went over to Suter in North Africa and we bought a 40-ounce bottle of gin for $2. And so it didn't seem much of a sacrifice, but it really works well. So you can use any alcohol, but I don't know, we usually grab gin or whiskey, but you got it. You got it in a squeezy bottle. So it's only a little squirt. But the cheaper, the better for the fish. But people will say it's wonderful because you're actually marinating your fish for that night for dinner too. So there we go.
All right. What are the apples wrapped with, and why wrap the apples? How long do they last?
Well, if you get crunchy apples, like I mentioned, Granny Smith or Pink Lady or something like that, the reason you wrap them is because basically on a boat shudders, it's banging around. So the apples bang around and they bruise. And once they bruise, they go soggy. So it's stopping them from bruising. So when you buy them, you need to be very picky about the ones you bought. We just happen to have a shelf between the lockers um, and at the back of our um, main cabin seat, which was just the width of an apple. So it was absolutely perfect. And I wrapped them in paper towel. That's all that was needed. And I used to do tomatoes and the same thing. And again, it's the bruising aspect.
All right. Do you vacuum seal your bedding off on off seasons to prevent moisture buildup?
I think it's a good idea. I think more important is to make sure it doesn't touch anything. So if your bedding is going to touch the sides of your boat or the deck head, you're going to get mildew in it, and it's going to not be pleasant for you for the next season. In BC, most people would remove their bedding from the boat. It's a bit of a chore, but it gives you a good chance, I guess, to wash everything thoroughly. But the important thing is that it doesn't touch things. And it's the same with your lockers. You need to leave lockers open because lockers will get mildew in them, particularly if you leave wooden boards, they'll be covered in mildew. So prop open the doors of, say, going into the head. So have a low heat in your boat. You may have a fan going, maybe a computer fan that takes no power, but you'll probably be plugged in anyway, and just keep that air circulating. So a lot of people vacuum pack. I think vacuum packing for food and vacuum packing for clothing, bedding is excellent idea.
What is the purpose of alcohol in the fish gills?
Oh, it anesthetize them. They will instantly go limp. Even the big fish, that big fish you saw Andy holding, instantly. Now, once you put them you have a bucket handy, so you gaff your fish and then you put your alcohol on. It's easier with two people, but I mean, you can do it with one. And then you hike the fish on board and you put it head first into the bucket. They may come alive again and go flat. But then, as I mentioned, the gills will be wide open. So then you can just put squirt, and they'll instantly go into oblivion. I mean, it's a very kind, if it is kind to kill a fish, a kind way of killing fish.
Do you have a favorite brand of powdered milk?
Oh no, I don't. I just go along to Safeway or whatever. I don't know. I don't think there's been much choice for me, so no, I don't. I know when we were down in Australia and New Zealand, everyone bought Sunshine. But I've never seen it here, so there we go.
All right. Can you talk about the bedding again? Did you say cotton sheets? What about a duvet? Would you use feathers?
Yes, I like, well, certainly let's talk about berths. I like a berth that's at least 5 inches thick because I think it's much more comfortable. And, a lot of people are using memory foam now, but that can be difficult to maneuver on a boat. Um, the when you have sheets, if you buy 100% cotton, they hold the moisture. It's like jeans that are 100% cotton, they will hold the moisture, which is why they get mildew. So the thing is where they get moisture in and then they always feel damp. So it's just a great idea if you can get sheets and your clothing with just a bit of polyester in, and it makes all the difference in the world to how they are, both in hot and cold climates. Um, so and of course keep them aerated. I use a duvet on the boat. I use polyester. I don't use a down one because of the dampness. And when I get to hot climates or when it's hot here, I'll put it under the sheet so it makes the berth more comfortable, but it's a good way of storing it. So a comfort, it's really important that you have a good night's sleep and to be comfortable. And I found all of those to be a good formula.
Do you have any suggestions for what type of foam you would use for a bunk mattress?
Oh no, I just go along to the guy who did the upholstery chose the foam. I have to say, I think they're the experts.
Perfect. What is the best way to store veggies like carrots, beets, and parsnips?
They're sort of what I call in between vegetables. They're not the root vegetables that last a whole long time. So the best way to store them is in a cold place. And again, let the air get to them. And make sure you check them frequently. But a cold, dark place. So boats tend not to have deep bilges these days, but you probably on your boats have what we have, which is you'll have a kind of a space under the floorboard that maybe is fiberglassed in. And those places are really ideal for all that kind of your vegetables, maybe your butter, your cheese. They'll keep very well down there. And particularly in BC, I have to say, because the water is very cold here. And so that's, closest to the hull of the boat. And I think you'll be surprised. And with things like lettuce, with iceberg lettuce and romaine, and I get them romaine hearts, and I find I can keep those for 3 weeks easily. But again, you need to check they're not going off, because you've got to get rid of those leaves.
All right, another question from our viewers at home. What cleaning products do you use for the galley and head?
Oh, I just use the regular ones. I use at home. Basically, I use Fantastic. One thing I will say, I use Windex on the mirrors, but don't use Windex on the plexiglass around your Dodgers, because it's not good for it at all. It'll make it cracked and opaque in the end. So be careful what you use. There are a lot of products around environmental products that occasionally I use. And I think they all do a good job. And I think we all get the a preference. But I don't know, I've used it Fantastic for so long, I just go on using it.
All right, we've had a few questions here about whether or not you would suggest bamboo sheets.
Oh, we have bamboo sheets and I find them very hot. So if you're cruising in a cold climate, I would say great. And if you're going to be in a hot climate, personally, I wouldn't use them. I think bamboo stuff is terrific, though. So if you can get lightweight bamboo sheets, go for it. I think they're wonderful. But do think about that weight again, because certainly the ones we have are very definitely winter items.
All right. If you don't keep apples in plastic bags, how do you store them and how do you secure your baskets?
Oh, I have my baskets. I have one in a corner on a shelf, which I have a strap holding it in. I have the other, normally my big one with a handle, under the main cabin table. And nothing should be kept in plastic. I mean, if you want anything to keep it at home, so never keep, well, you probably all know you wouldn't keep mushrooms in plastic. Don't keep your oranges in plastic. Don't keep your broccoli in plastic. Don't keep your beans in plastic. It will all go off more quickly, and particularly if it's hot, if they're kept in plastic. So get it out of plastic as quickly as possible. And anything you don't want bruised, then, as I say, wrap individually, or put it in a basket and check it really carefully, and wedge it in tightly so it's not moving around.
All right. And the last question we have here, is it possible to get a copy of the slide presentation?
Well, no, because this is my slide presentation. But I will say that if you want to read about everything I've said today and far more, because you can only say so much, you'll find it all in Cruising for Cowards. Get the ebook, which is under $10, and I think you'll find it really useful.
Perfect. I think we have a little bit more time. We can sneak in another question here. Loved the cooler with buckets and storing garbage and recycling. Can you throw most compostables overboard?
Yes, you can, but you can have to, if you recall, I mentioned the Marpole Treaty. So it has to be cut up very small, and it has to be at least 3 miles from shore to be legal. We run into a sort of an issue here in BC, because sort of the Strait of Georgia is really almost like an inland water. So make sure it is really, really, don't put it down till you're in the middle of the strait. Put it in a really strong current, and make sure it really is biodegradable, well, compostable, and just don't put anything that's not down, because it's going to end up on a shore somewhere. But garbage is always a difficult one, and anything you're in doubt about, always keep. We have very good In all, I think pretty well all the big centers in the world, we have very good facilities. You do need, though, when you're not in big centers, just to maybe suss out where they are putting their garbage. You know, we've been to islands where they just toss it over the hill on the far side of the island. Well, obviously, what's the point? You don't want to do that. So find out about it, and be really careful when you shop to try and get rid of as much garbage as you can.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of our time here today. Is there anything you want to add before we go here?
Oh, I'll just add that you can chat to me. I hope it all works on the BC Marine Authors booth. I'll just go and put myself on, and I'd love to answer any more questions. And great you could join us today. I think this is a wonderful way of doing things.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that presentation today. Liza, a lot of great feedback coming in the chat. A lot of people saying great presentation. So thank you for being here and thank you for your time. And thank you all at home for joining us as well. We are interested in your feedback either on this seminar or if you have any ideas on topics you would like us to cover in the future. Simply click on the Evaluate tab located just above the seminar description to complete the form. And after the show, all attendees will receive a post-show survey. Be sure to check out all of the features and the VIBS virtual. If you have any questions, check out the info booth for answers, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day here at the boat show. Once again, thank you, Liza, for your time here, and I hope you all take care.
Great to be with you.